I'll hand over to our next speaker now. It's Nicholas Lovell of GamesBrief. He's going to run through the companies he thinks are doing well and the companies he thinks are doing badly in video games. And he's going to check your opinions on things as things run and see if he's convinced you or if you agree with him or if you think he's mental. So I'd like to welcome Nicholas to the stage.
I'm now slightly wondering why I agreed to do this. Michael caught me at a One Life Left broadcast where we were talking about E3. And it was fun. I was in a good mood. He said, come and say something controversial. I went, that'll be fine. It's one thing doing it from behind a blog. It's another thing to do it in a room full of people. So we'll see how brave I am. And we'll see how well I convince you one way or the other. So let's start with introduction. I'm Nicholas Lovell. I write a blog on the business of games at GamesBrief. And nearly everything I do is focused on this transition, moving from box products to digital, moving from being product-centric to being customer-centric, and looking at new ways of making money in that world. I used to be a banker. I stopped doing that before the bankers destroyed the world, long before that. That definitely wasn't my fault. And I have clients ranging from the very big, kind of Atari and Square Enix, to the non-games, Channel 4 and IPC Media and magazines, through to either developers like Firefly, startups like Endreams. I call them a startup. We've been running for 5 years now, helping them find new business models. And I've written books, how to publish a game, GamesBrief Unplugged 1 and 2. I recently, GamesBrief Unplugged 2, it's all stuff on the blog, but GamesBrief Unplugged 2 has 65 pages on what went wrong at Real-Time Worlds, but from me and from guest posters. And I would say this, wouldn't I? But I went back and reread it, because it's about the only place where it's all gathered together. It's genuinely fascinating and properly cautionary. I would say that, but do go get it. So that's the end of my ad. Subscribe to the blog. So I'm up before Ian, because the younger guys get to test stuff to make sure it works. Ian Livingston's the other person doing voting stuff. So before we get into my stuff of who's going to win and who's going to lose, we've got 4 questions to test that the technology works and to get a sense as to the prejudices of the audience. So let's get interactive. Also, as I'm sure people who work in the entertainment industry know, a lot of this is smoke and mirrors. We're going to be chopping and changing between my screens and their screens at the back, hopefully without you noticing. I'm not expecting this to work seamlessly. So let's see. So here's the first question. Are free-to-play games evil? There you are. How seamless was that? We're in voting now. I think you can vote. If you think free-to-play games are evil, press 1. If you think they're not, press 2. Numbers rattling up in the top left-hand corner. They did, at one point, threaten not to show us the results until every single person in the room had voted. So we've stopped. Who hasn't voted? We're only halfway through. Be brave. Right. OK, you're all rubbish. OK, so let's get the results rather than waiting for everybody else. They're not evil. 86% of people say free-to-play games aren't evil, and 14% of that means 10 people in the room think they're evil. You'll be pleased to know we don't know who you are. Next question. Now, will we get more people voting on this one, just on principle, or are we going to get the same number of people? Actually, to be fair, there are blank seats. I imagine that 280 is seats, not people. So we've got about the same amount of people. OK, we've got 150 answers. Some people having to think quite hard about that one. OK. No, they're not. Just. OK, let's move on. Is Tiny Tower evil? Tiny Tower is my favourite current free-to-play iPhone game, but I did put in you might not know who it is. So this is about the only one where we have a multiple option. It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, isn't it? It's great. OK, so the Nimblebit guys will like me for this, because you should go and check it out. As a game, I think that it is one of the best examples of how to make a free-to-play game that isn't cynical. So go play it. There are people who don't agree with me, obviously, but go play it. It's free to play on your iPhone or iPad. And the last question. So you can see what I'm trying to get at here in a whole bunch of ways. So far, I think we've proven the test that technology works, and it's making people laugh, which is great. The National Lottery is clearly thought of as being more evil than free-to-play games. I think that is a result, if nothing else. So excellent. So there's something which I will find very useful for a whole bunch of other things I want to work on. So thank you for being guinea pigs for that piece of research. I have other talks around the free-to-play evilness, so that's going to be very useful. So now I want to turn forward and move through to the real event today, which is 4 companies which are going to be winners and 4 companies which are going to be losers from this digital transition. So let's start. Let's start by saying who I'm not going to talk about. Now, some of those people, obviously, because I've just followed them, and that would just be embarrassing. But also, I wanted to try and avoid talking about all the people we kind of know about, we kind of think about. So here's some people I'm not going to talk about, and here's the first company I am going to talk about. Zynga, a usual suspect. 205 million nearly MAUs, not deduplicated, but a huge amount of people. 600 million in revenue, 125 million operating profit, although having occasional quarterly wobbles. So at one level, these guys are synonymous with free-to-play. They created the sector on social. They're hopefully going to float at a valuation of $10 billion. But the recent Facebook change, I don't know if you saw this, but Facebook changed the way it counted users. And the way it counted them was it used to be, when you landed on that page which says, do you want to install the app, you were counted as an active user, even if you clicked no. So when they stopped doing that and didn't count the people who said, no, bugger off, you're a Zynga game, I don't want to go near you, 20 million people fell off their MAU figure. That means they're paying. If you take the figure, I'm not sure Zynga's paying this, but you're paying $1 a user, which is what a lot of people talk about. They're paying $20 million for the people who immediately say no. That's quite a big issue. The Adventure World game is very, very cynical for how it makes you play. Zynga is unequivocally following a strategy. Sorry, I believe Zynga is following a strategy whereby it gets you into its games. It works out really quickly. The average life cycle of a Zynga player is only 2 months on a given game. Whether or not you're going to spam your friends or spend money in this game. And if you won't, they don't want you. And they kick you out of that game. Now, they try to kick you into another one of their games, and they have lots of them, and they're going to keep forcing you through all of them until they find the game that you will spend on or will spam people for. I think that's cynical. I think that is sufficiently cynical that as this market develops, and as we're going to see games become the gaming element, the entertainment element, the passion that we all have for making games become more important in free-to-play, the Zynga spreadsheet-led execution strategy is going to be challenging. And I think the tipping point has reached, the tipping point has passed. I think they've missed their moment to float. I think they'll get away, but I think that the peak would have been earlier. And I'm putting them up as a 0 in a radical extent to try and surprise people. So that's what I've said, and I've made my measlings clear. Let's go to a vote and see whether or not you think that Zynga is going to be a hero or a 0. 1 vote for me. Again, people having to think a little bit. There are more people voting this time. Okay, let's see the results. Let's see how we're going. So I won. I persuaded you that Zynga's going to be a 0. We did at one point consider having a before and after thing to see whether or not actually I'd change people's minds or not. Concluded that technically it was too difficult. But it's pretty close on that one. And I see that. I mean, there's no doubt that Zynga has been phenomenally successful. And being British, that means I want to knock them down again. But they're also, I think, in danger of not being representative of what all can be great about the free-to-play opportunity. And that's why I don't want them to be a 0. I want them to change. But if they keep being cynical, I think that it would be better for all of us if that faded from the heart of free-to-play. Okay, let's return back to the presentation. The next one, PlayStation Home. Does anybody actually know what that is? So Home has a lot of users, about 3 million, I think. I think that Home is potentially one of the great unsung and unloved opportunities within the console market. I think another way of looking at Home is the place where free-to-play comes to console without having to get anybody's permission, because it's already there. The problem that Home suffers from, I don't know how many senior executives are in the room, but nearly everybody I've spoken to from Sony who doesn't work on Home thinks of it as a place where brands can advertise to punters, which doesn't really work because there aren't very many punters. The same problem with Second Life. They kind of envisage it as a kind of Second Life. But it's actually very much not like that. What Home has, which is positive, is console-style quality in a persistent world, semi-persistent world, with really easy purchase process because your credit card's often already in and connected to PlayStation Network. I think the problem with Home is a strategic execution, not a flawed principle. And I think that as free-to-play has been proven demonstrably to work, as in within the PlayStation home world. When the PlayStation Network came down, it was the home players who came back fastest and hardest after the PlayStation Network came back up again. I think we'll see an enormous amount of work from Sony to make home more successful. And I think we'll also see that all of what we see from the free-to-play market, that a limited number of people represent a huge revenue opportunity, is going to get bigger and better within home. So for me, home is a hero. Unsung as yet, a future hero. It isn't a hero yet, but I think it may well be one of Sony's biggest assets in the long term. Does anybody agree? Let's go to a vote and find out. I did bring my voting thing with me, obviously, just because it helps a tiny bit. Okay, I think we've got enough. So people aren't convinced. Now, I can see that. Sony has to change its attitude in order for this to work. At the moment, it is a deeply unloved part of the console of the Sony world, frankly laughed at by many people. Did you know that they've just launched a first-person shooter, a free-to-play first-person shooter? I think actually a free first-person shooter within home. No. And that is probably the reason why more people voted for Zeros than Heroes. Let's see. This is one I'm prepared to hold on for the long term for. We'll see. Moving back, here's another company, Nimblebit. The game on the left is Pocket Frog. The game on the right is Tiny Tower, for those of you who didn't recognise it. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that my Tiny Tower is of impressive proportions. I have 100 floors in this tiny tower. That's taken me a very long time to get there. This company consists of two brothers, like so many startups, brothers, twins. They're in their late 20s. Pocket Frog was a game which they did first, iPad friendly. It's about the only game I've ever managed to persuade my wife to play. And did I put the chart in? I did. So here is an iPhone, iPad free-to-play game. Here are the IAPs which they sell. There are two things. The game is basically frogs meets Tamagotchi. You grow frogs, you breed them, you kind of look after them. And the things which you can buy are that you can buy frogs or habitats from the in-store shop. And the frogs, when they turn up, are babies. They're not tadpoles, because obviously the animation was too hard. They're little frogs. And it takes them about a day to grow to full size. Or you can buy a potion to make them grow instantly. And when you order something from the shop, they take some time to arrive, or you can buy a kind of stamp to get a kind of virtual DHL service which delivers them immediately. And they sell these in packages of 99 cents, $4.99 and $29.99. And by transaction volume, half of the transactions are at 99 cents, and 8% roughly are at $29.99. By revenue, it's the other way round. And the traditional model of light plus premium would have said that you go from 0 to 99p and that's the cap of your revenue. But instead, these guys, the cap of their revenue per transaction is $29.99. Not per user. They've got users complaining on Twitter that there isn't a $79.99 version. They've got people buying multiple copies of this. Now, these are fans. These are people who've been playing this game for a very, very long time. And for me, what these guys have done is understood the true secret of free-to-play. The true secret of free-to-play is not to be scared of the free bit. That's happening. Get over it. It's going to be a problem. But it's to realise that what the internet has enabled is two things. Sharing content freely is cheap, and building one-to-one relationships with customers and allowing them to spend a variable amount of money with you is possible. It used to be that the only way you could, if you're thinking the box product world, the price is basically fixed, so it's only a volume game. Now the amount of money a customer is prepared to spend with you is enormous. I have one client when one customer spent $10,000 in the first 4 months. I'm not sure I'm recommending that as a business model. My point is that the extremes are there. Big Point has a Premiership footballer spending £1,000 a day on their games. You know, that's changed. So the Nimblebit guys, two brothers, Tiny Tower took them 4 months. Conservatively, I estimated that they would make $3 million in the first year from that game. They've told me via Twitter that they will make much more than that. These guys are, for me, a hero. What do you think? Now, given 60% of you said, what's Tiny Tower, I suspect you're mainly going on what I've said, which may be a good thing or a bad thing. We'll see. Let's see the results, please. Yay! I win that one. The Tiny Tower guys will love me. And you should go and download their games because they're free. Okay. Moving on. Subscription MMOs. Now, I have to confess, I mean, one of the reasons this talk came up is that I wrote a piece maybe a year ago, saying 10 games companies which are doomed. And I put Trion Worlds in there because, for me, launching a subscription-based MMO is statistically likely to fail. Now, I've been wrong on that one, clearly. Rift seems to have done really well. But if you were asking me where would I put my money, would I put it in the enormous binary yes-no bet on a subscription-based MMO? I wouldn't. So I was wrong on that one. And it would be a brave person who says that Warcraft is totally doomed. But let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about this in the last one. The problem with subscriptions, to people who sell games in boxes and the opportunity to make $50 from a customer once every 2 or 3 years, once a year if you're EA and Activision, that changing it to a monthly subscription with a one-to-one relationship with your customers seemed really exciting. The $10, $15 a month MMO subscription is brilliant. But this red curve here is my attempt at a price-demand curve, and it's a power law. And what I'm trying to get at here is that for any given piece of entertainment content, I believe that most people will only play it if they don't have to pay for it, consume it. A Duffy album, most people don't want to pay for. I own a Hearsay album, can you believe that? And, I really didn't want to have paid for that. For those of you who don't remember, they were winners of one of the first reality TV shows, Pop Idols, I think. I'm not quite sure why I bought the album. These days, I'd have listened to it, decided it was rubbish, and not spent any money. At the other end of the spectrum, for the people who love what you do, they will spend a lot of money, really a genuine lot of money. Some of it they'll spend with you. If you are making Call of Duty, you can charge for the limited edition, special edition with the night vision goggles. The RuneScape guys run cosplay conventions where people spend thousands of dollars on flights and coming there. I saw somebody who, I was asking for true fans, and somebody said, I'm a true fan of RuneScape. I jacked in my 2.5 years worth of degree to come to the UK and start again so I could be nearer to the developers. So there is a level where this doesn't make sense. The point for me for the subscription and why the free-to-play conversions that we're seeing, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons & Dragons Online and so on, is that the $10 subscription is 2 things. It's clearly a barrier to entry. It stops people from going, yes, I'll pay $10. Sony say, and this is very interesting, most of us have a short-term memory for about 7 digits. It's the reason why London phone numbers used to be anyway 7 digits long, because that's what we can remember. Anytime we have a to-do list item that's more than 7 things long, we think we have an infinite number of things to do on a list. If you've ever written down a list and gone, oh, it's only 10 things, and feel slightly relieved, that's because every time you were trying to go through in your own head, whenever something came in, something else had to drop out. Your memory wasn't long enough. With subscriptions, it's a bit the same. If a subscription goes, oh, I've just remembered that one, oh, I've just remembered that one, you think that you're not getting value from your subscriptions. So Sony theorises that there is only room for 7 subscription-type things in your life. Your gym membership, magazine subscriptions, MMO subscriptions, Xbox Live payments, those kind of things. It used to include mobile phones and internet, but those things have now drifted over to be utilities like water and so on. What that means is that to get your subscription adopted, you have to persuade them to drop another subscription. Sign up to Warcraft, drop your gym membership, that kind of thing. So, okay, so maybe that one isn't the key, but that sort of thing. So to get people in, you've got that barrier you've created by that subscription. You've got them going, am I going to be like it? It must spend $10 a month, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And that's what we've tended to focus on. But we've underestimated the people who are prepared to spend $10,000 with us if we enable them to. My consultancy talks about not 10,000. You should make it possible for people to spend $100 a month. That's what you should be aiming to do. So for me, a subscription business, if you reach the massive volume of Warcraft, is a good business. But if you aren't totally confident you will get there, if you have a niche of players who love what you do, you should abandon the subscription, and you should make it possible for the people who love what you do to spend money on stuff they value in your game. For that reason, I think that subscription MMOs are, we've seen the end of them. I'm not sure there will be any more. I think they are now zeros. I'm not actually yet prepared to say that Warcraft is going to die. It has such kind of momentum behind it. But I don't think we will see any more big ones after the Old Republic. What do you think? Okay, let's see the results. We got 160. Now that's an interesting one. I don't know how many people have bonuses dependent on MMOs or business dependent on MMOs, but that might be important. But I won, and I wasn't necessarily expecting to win that one, so I'm pleased by that one. Okay, moving on. Handhelds. It's a tough time to be a handheld business, isn't it? You've got... What you used to offer was really good gaming on the go. Now what you offer is really good gaming on the go, much more expensively than other really good gaming on the go. And this, I think, is a really, really big problem. I was genuinely intrigued to hear GameStop say a tablet, which isn't quite the thing I'm talking about here, but a tablet with an HDMI output is nearly as good an experience as a console once you can plug it into your screen. So that means that now to sell people a handheld, they have to have decided that the iPhone or the Android, which they currently have in their pocket, isn't good enough, and that they would rather pay for a PSP Vita or a Nintendo 3DS than an iPad. And I think that's a really, really, really big ask, because you're only getting one thing when you're trying to get the handhelds, which is games. And you get so much more with those other devices. And frankly, amongst kids, I think iPads are way cooler these days than the other platforms. And then there's a second problem, because when talking to people in the industry, I hear people often saying, yeah, but I want a PSP, so they're not going away. And that hides a fundamental economic truth, that the business model of the handhelds historically has been all about volume, scale, and once you reach that volume, making a lot of money. It doesn't take all of us to stop buying handhelds for the model to break. It takes some of us. I confess to not knowing how many of us. Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 80%? I think it's nearer 20 to 40 than 80. So for the handhelds to be in real trouble, you don't have to believe that the 3DS is going to suddenly not be bought by Nintendo fanboys. You need to believe that some Nintendo fanboys won't buy it. Nobody who isn't a Nintendo fanboy is going to be excited by it. They're going to buy other platforms instead. It's going to be really, really hard for somebody who is creating dedicated gaming handhelds to compete with the really high-powered machines that we have in our pockets all the time anyway. So for me, going forward, handhelds are a big zero. What do you guys think? Okay, I think we're nearly there. Let's go. Oh! So was there anybody from Nintendo in the room? I can't remember, but that's that. And if you are about to be launching the PS Vita, that's quite scary. Okay, let's move on. Cloud gaming. Now, I had a challenge here. I said I wasn't going to talk about OnLive, so I've cheated by talking about Gaikai. There are... I think the idea of getting rid of expensive plastic boxes under our plasma screens, whose primary benefit to anybody is as a very expensive piece of DRM, is they're coming to the end. And that the idea of sharing stuff much more cheaply through the cloud is much, much more exciting. There are reasons why it won't happen in a hurry. The kind of retailer console manufacturer guys scared of digital transition, propping each other up, are going to keep the console much more physical in terms of the content, the physical disc, and it ought to be going all digital, but the retailers are going to help persuade them to keep it non-digital. That ongoing battle between people who need each other and slightly hate each other at all times, that kind of abusive relationship that retailers and publishers have. I mean, it's going to be slower to happen than it should, which might mean that possibly, getting off topic here, some disruptive technology just around the corner, a tablet with a HDMI output and a great controller, jumps in the way and goes, you know what, we can give a better experience. For me, I'm going to put Gaikai forward, not OnLive, because I don't really believe in the OnLive business model. And I talked about OnLive, I talked about with the subscriptions, why I said that I didn't believe in Rift, Tree on Worlds originally, was because the bet is so big. Either they win or they don't. OnLive are trying to change the way consumers behave. They're trying to persuade people to buy a subscription service to get access to content. Now, if that works, B-Sky-B tried to do the same. It tried to persuade people to change the way they consumed, in particular, football. And it got exclusive rights to football and is now one of the most successful media businesses on the planet until a certain amount of mistakes were made in the newspaper arm of that business, of the News Corp. So if OnLive manages to get some equivalent of must-have content to football, it is conceivable it could become as powerful as Sky became in this space. I can't think of any such piece of must-have content. The nearest thing I can imagine is World of Warcraft, and the amount of money you'd have to spend to get Warcraft exclusive on OnLive makes even my mind boggle, and I can think of big numbers. Gaikai, on the other hand, is trying to become a platform. It's trying to change the way that people reach customers and goes, you know what, I don't know what business model is going to work in this cloud stuff. I just believe it's going to work. This isn't a technical thing. I am not capable of telling you whether or not OnLive's tech is better than Gaikai. I don't know. But their approach to market, which goes, we'll build a platform and cleverer people than us will work out how to make this work for consumers, makes me very excited. And I think it will change the way we play games, distribute games. So for me, Gaikai is a hero. What do you think? Let's go to the vote. People thinking harder about this one. We're not getting right up to the top. Okay. So I think I'm doing quite well so far. I'm quite pleased with this. So it's a hero, but not everybody is convinced. Again, I totally understand that. I think Gaikai is a safer bet than OnLive. If OnLive makes it, it will probably make it much bigger than Gaikai can. My fear is that you're taking such a big bet that for me, I'm much, much more excited for how Gaikai is doing things. Okay. I've only got 5 minutes. We've got 2 more votes, and then I want to have a look at the final results. We're going to go a little bit faster. THQ. The market is polarising. The big are getting bigger. You can be a consolidator and also ran. I still believe in AAA console product for some time. I just think that the working capital that you need to bring a AAA product to market is incredibly big. Modern Warfare 2 cost $50 million to develop. The total cost of bringing it to market, just to launch date, was $200 million. That was a $200 million bet on Modern Warfare 2. More once you continue the ongoing development and manufacturing. Now, they made $500 million at retail in the first week, so they did all right. But the number of people who can take that bet is very, very few. Anytime a business, in my experience covering the media sector as a banker, anytime a business is like that, it consolidates until the regulator stops it. The number of movie studios in the world, the number of record labels in the world, the number of TV stations in a market, free-to-air TV stations, the number of book publishers ends up consolidating because it just makes much more financial sense. So I reckon at the top table, there is space for 5 to 7 global AAA publishers. I think EA and Activision have a pretty good shot at being in that spot. I think Warner has a shot. And I think the last 4 slots are up for grabs. Square Enix and Ubisoft, Take-Two and others. But to get there, you need must-have content. Content which people will fall over themselves to buy come what may. And I really struggle to see that THQ has that. I see THQ as being the kind of business which has perfectly okay products which were fine in the pre-digital world, when somebody would walk into a GameStop and buy something because that's what they needed to do. In this new digital world with so many options and alternatives, I don't think an also-ran has. If you don't have a must-have blockbuster, and several of them preferably, I think you're in trouble. So one of the ones that I'm more scared about today, I'm putting THQ up as a 0, as representative of all of the not full-size guys who aren't going to be able to make it to the top table. Let me know what you think. I'm genuinely scared about this one. Okay, let's see. So it's not just me. I'm slightly relieved that it's not just me. Now, the interesting thing is there's still opportunities to change. But if your strategy is, we can't be quite as big as the big guys, but we're going to do what we've always done in the past anyway, I think you've got a really big problem. Okay, moving on to the last one. Amazon. So we all know Amazon. It sells stuff which comes to our door and makes the post office happy. This, of course, is the biggest contribution they've made to the digital boom that we're currently experiencing. Without Amazon Web Services, the number of startups who could grow and scale would be tiny, and that is probably their biggest contribution to the digital transition. It's amazing. And then there's this, and this, I think, the first true mass market potential competitor to the iPad. That's the Kindle Fire. Android-based, cheaper than the iPad. Less annoyingly, we think we know best than the iPad. I think it's a really interesting opportunity. Sorry, I'm quite an Apple hate boy by nature and still have an iPhone and iPad and think they're great, but there's just lots there's lots which I would like to be very different about them. So for me, Amazon is somebody who is going, you know what, the world is genuinely changing. We started out trying to be a retailer of books, of all things, and now we are somebody who is actually transforming the landscape of digital by thinking smarter, harder and cleverer. Why does a book retailer power the back end of the majority of social games businesses in the world. I mean, just why? It doesn't make sense. And yet it does, because they're taking all of their expertise at building those massive scalable platforms, rolling them out to other people, and making the digital ecosystem even more successful. So for me, Amazon's a hero. It's the last one. What do you think? Not everybody's voting. You're chickening out at the last one. OK, let's just go to the results then. OK, to finish on a everybody agrees with me. Maybe it wasn't that controversial. Maybe that's why. OK, so the guys at the back are doing some very low-tech gathering to see how I've done by entering some stuff into PowerPoint while I talk for a couple of minutes. So the results which we've had, look, all this stuff comes from the same, thank you, from the same theme. The same theme is that, I think I've just realised I've done my slides the wrong way around. Oh well, my theme is that we're moving into a world where it's about being moving from being product-centric to being customer-centric, having direct relationships with your customer, breaking the tyranny of volume to the opportunity to say, I will find players who love what I do and enable them to spend lots of money with me over a long period of time by offering them great value, things that they value. And from that, these aren't my zeros. I did this slide wrong. It's gone all over the shop. OK, let's move forward. Let's see the results. We'll see how I did. And we're going to move into a world where understanding your customer is going to be the absolute key, most important thing that you do. And selling product isn't even going to enter into how we think. So, Zynga, I said, was a 0. You agreed. Nimblebit, Gaikai, and Amazon, I said, were heroes. You agreed. Let's go forward 1. PlayStation Home, let's see the results. PlayStation Home, I said was a 0. I said was a hero, and you disagreed. So I think that's the only one where you didn't agree with me. So I've spent some time not only introducing to interactive conferences, which I've never seen before, but I've made you think a little bit about how the world is changing. And I've persuaded you of all but one of my views as to which companies are going to be big winners and which companies are going to be big losers from this digital transition. Thank you very much for listening.